profession, if you really want to do it. I mean, I hear teachers say all the time, treat us like professionals. You know, if that really is the goal, then make teaching a profession, but it raises the bar. It changes the bar. You know, entry level is not down here anymore. You know, we have teachers all across our country, all across America. I can't remember the percentage, so I'm not going to throw it out. You have teachers teaching high school math with no math degree. It's all over the country. You have teachers teaching all kinds of subject matter like that because they have to, because there's not a professional in that class that has that training and background to teach it, so they have to teach science and math. That should be unacceptable in our country, right? So let's change the dialogue.
The law compared to the legislation?
Well, it doesn't happen in North Carolina. It's just not a North Carolina thing, you know. It's one of those things, Jeff, that you want to.
Well, it's like saying you got to develop technology for it too. My vision of what you're saying would be by using proper technology and so forth, if we make that available in all the schools around the district, so that only the best teachers are teaching.
Mm-hmm.
My vision would be we eventually have a fourth as many teachers making 4 times the money they're making.
I mean, that's impossible. You still have to have teachers in the classroom, there's no doubt. They have to, if you have if you have a classroom like this and everybody's got a computer in their class and kids can be taking different classes from all over the state, they can be doing that digitally from wherever, and you have, just like at a university, where you have a professor, the best professor that teaches that class and a bunch of students in there, and then you have to have those teachers that deal with the students one-on-one, answer the questions, deal with them in a competency-based piece. Those students that can progress really fast, they do it on their own anyway. Those students that need more help, the teachers are there to help them along.
Lieutenant Governor Gary Hodges, Director of Chamber and incoming President. In relationship to teaching, yes, we do need to make teachers a profession. Yes, it would take 100 years to change that model. But we can do one thing today to significantly help education. I can go to any high school and go to the band program, for example, and look at the statistical average of their grades, and they're statistically higher than the norm. I can look at their disciplinary issues, and they're statistically lower than the norm. What is the one word that is defining that? It's called discipline. There needs to be some kind of law or something that can go in here so teachers are not intimidated by students and everything else, and change this norm so that what we have and living with right now will work better than it is currently. It is a shame what's going on in our schools. And that is affecting what's going on in the
You know, you have, let's see, about half of the population of America now being born into fatherless homes. You have in the African American community about 72-73% of the population being born into fatherless homes. Young men that are raised up without a father figure in the home that can be discipline problems down the road, those types of things. All these kind of issues. Young people, young kids showing up for kindergarten that have never read a book, never seen a book, never had anybody read to them before when they get there. At certain levels within certain communities, I think we need to deal with early childhood education. I really do. I think you've got to start early. I mean, so many, this is one where the science books have been opened and closed on this issue for a long time. The brain is forming when it's in the womb, and those first 4, 5, 6 years of a child's life are so incredibly important to what they learn and how they learn it, and the ways that they learn it, and the positive reinforcement that's around them in their schools or their homes or their communities. Absolutely critical. We know there's a lot of kids that aren't getting that, and they're showing up in school and they're being labeled right from then on. A kid can't read by the 3rd grade, their chance for success drops exponentially if you don't read by the 3rd grade. And so we have to deal with some communities with these issues that end up springing into discipline issues later in life. And what I like to say is everybody has a story, right? I mean, are you willing to get to know the person's story? That's what we need. We need people that love these kids, are willing to get to know their stories, right, and get to know them and change some lives. It happened, unfortunately. The reality about teaching, and your wife and any other, we probably have other teachers in here too, the reality is lives are transformed one at a time. That is the reality. Every one of us in this room can think of somebody in our life that changed our lives. It made a huge impact on us. It happens one at a time. And that's why this profession of teaching is critically important, right? Because in a lot of cases, these teachers are the people that they're going to look to transform life. But yes, there's absolutely no reason that a teacher, I mean, think about being a young lady that's 23 years old, coming out of college, going into a high school class and feeling like their life is threatened. And what do? They leave. They just leave. They say, I'm not going to do this. I can be the best teacher in the world. but they're not gonna put their life on the line to do it. Should be no excuse for that from a discipline standpoint. It used to be when I was in school, it was Mr. Mazzaferro, who was my assistant principal, who was about this big and walked around with a paddle on his hand with holes in it. And, you're just like, man, I don't want to go see Mr. Mazzaferro. You dreaded going to see Mr. Mazzaferro. In the fourth grade, it was Miss Alexander, who would walk around and pop you on the knuckles with a yardstick if you got out of line. This is the way we grew up. This is the way most of us grew up. And I'm not condoning corporal punishment in schools now. Don't take it as that. But the point is, there was discipline in schools. And there was discipline at home. And when kids got home, if they acted up in school, if it wasn't from the teacher or the assistant principal, it was mom and dad. Right? It was your mom and your daddy that got on you. And you feared that more sometimes than you feared the principal or assistant principal. And we don't have that anymore. We have a victim mentality in our culture where everybody's a victim and everybody points at somebody else and says why they're not responsible. Right? So there's a lot of cultural issues we've got to deal with here that go way beyond education. Right? There's a lot of cultural issues that go way beyond education, but the basis of it starts with education. And if we could start at the very earliest ages of a lot of these folks and help transform that culture long term, then we're going to be a little farther ahead. Yes, sir, back to the right.
No, Lenny Schaff, retired. You're right that it changes by one person at a time, but the way we have either our tax system or the way we have the things that we pay for, we get what we pay for, we get what we reward. And if we, and I don't tend to know what I'm talking about here, but if we pay people for having illegitimate children, if we pay for X number of things, or if we set up our welfare system so that somebody has to earn basically $34,000 or $35,000 to meet the same equivalent that you're getting for free and sitting home, we're doing nothing but destroying ourselves.
Yeah.
What are we doing? What are you doing in order to change the incentives so that we're getting back to the positive things?
Yeah, when the states worked on it, the state's a minuscule part of that. Again, the federal government's a much larger part of it on the welfare reform side. We've gone to workfare before. We've seen the roles of welfare drop during workfare movements, and we've seen them rise a little bit again. But yes, I mean, I think any able-bodied person should work, but the system should also, we have the safety net system, which I think is a good system in America, but it should also work in the favor of the person that's trying to lift themselves out. Right? If they're on welfare and they're trying to make ends meet and support their kids and all this kind of stuff, and they're working their way out, and they hit a certain threshold, this shouldn't drop to the bottom as their support structure, because then they're going to say, "Oh, I'm just going to go back to this because the gap is too big." And so those things need to rise and fall together, right? Until all of a sudden you can attain that level, and then this can go away, and they can get themselves back on their feet again. Or it's common sense. To me, it's basic common sense. Design the system to help lift people out of poverty and get them back on their feet again, get them working again. Don't let the system work against them, and that's what's happening now in America. We had a provision that we did in this last session that said if you are able-bodied in North Carolina and you're receiving food stamps, then you have to be pursuing a job, you have to be pursuing an education, or you're not going, or get a job, or you're not going to have this opportunity for subsidies from the government. And I think every able-bodied American, especially if you don't have kids. I mean, there was a report that recently came out of Maine on this, and Maine did, food stamps has grown exponentially over the last 15 years. It was like 15% of the population was on food stamps, and like 47% or something now. It's a huge number. And in Maine, they said, they came out with this law a year or so ago and said any able-bodied person without kids has to work if they're going to receive food stamps. And what they saw overnight, it was a matter of like a few months, their rolls of food stamps dropped 80%. 80% just by saying you have to work for the subsidy you're getting. Well, I think that, there have been, I don't operate on polls, but there were polls done on this. I think it's 90% of America thinks that every able-bodied American that can work should work. I mean, it's not just about the money, it's about the dignity of work. It's about the pride and dignity that you have as a human being for having a job and being able to support your family and raise your kids and all those kinds of things. That's just human nature. That's a good thing. We kind of owe that to our young people to give them that kind of desire, right, as they grow up, to want to work and want to take care of themselves and want to take care of their families. Yes, ma'am, all the way over here. Thank you for being patient. I did see the corner of my eye.
Teresa, I'm the president here for Rocky Mountain County Council. First, thank you for coming and having this discussion with us. I have listened and I continue to hear connectivity, connecting to our urban centers, access to technology that affects healthcare, it's affecting education, absolutely affects small business. What is the state and our legislature doing or can they do to help with rural broadband connectivity? Most people don't realize that there are so many towns and communities here in the Twin Counties and probably eastern North Carolina. You step outside of the city of Rocky Mount and your connectivity to the globe, to the world, is spotty at best.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So when a mother has to drive her child from her home to the library in downtown Rocky Mount so that he can connect up and do his homework, or doctors cannot help patients that are sitting out in Speed, North Carolina because they can't use connectivity to employee or,
Mobile medicine.
record data.
No, you're exactly right. We have demand, really, in the business community. You can travel the world and walk into a Starbucks anywhere in the world. We demand that we have high-speed broadband so we can sit in Starbucks and do our business anywhere in the world. But we haven't had that same demand for our schools. We haven't had that same demand for our communities. And so I think we're at that point. There's a lot of conversations going on around this all the time. I'm involved in them all the time, in fact, about rural connectivity. Here's the hope that I see related to that. You have Google, you have Facebook, and several other technology companies. But Google and Facebook are the big ones. And Apple did, but they sold theirs. But they have bought solar drone companies for the very purpose of connecting the rural world to high-speed broadband through drones, through flying drones over the rural part of the world, because 1/3 of the world is not connected at all. So finally, they see a business proposition in this to connect it, right? They're doing this. It's being tested and done right now. I think in the very short-term future, you're going to see technology change at rapid paces to where you don't have to have wired connections to get high-speed broadband in rural parts of our state, our country, our world. You're going to see that very quickly because 1/3 of the world is a lot of customers for these companies. They want to connect the world, right? And so I think the short-term hope is that those kind of things are happening. We kind of operate in this mindset of, how do we get fiber to that home that is 20 miles down the road, so it's never going to happen because the fiber is not going to happen, right? So it's going to happen through satellite, through the air, through drone technology and that type of stuff. So I think that's the positive side. But these conversations, in fact, I am sitting on a committee. We're going to wrap up time here, Greg. I'm sitting on a committee here this week, and I can't remember, I think it's tomorrow or Thursday, about this very topic, about rural connectivity. And there's a, I can't remember the acronym now, but it's about the Internet of Things, connecting everything. So this is a hot topic, not just here, but all over the world right now. And there's a lot of people that are a whole lot smarter than me that are working on it and trying to figure it out. So I think it's a very short-term thing. We'll see connectivity come quickly. One more question. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Cindy Sadler. I work in the City of Rocky Mount in the Downtown Development Office, and my question relates to employee retention. As you mentioned earlier, we are close to this urban hub. It's only an hour away, which is great from a state perspective, and it's wonderful that Triangle's growing. However, it can be a hindrance to a small business owner here in Rocky Mount for those young professional, high-skilled employees when they see the bright and shiny lights of Raleigh. So are there any state initiatives or strategies that could possibly assist the small town, small time business owners?
Well, I don't think it's the role of the state. We look to the state for so many things. A lot of these questions, are directed at the state. What's the state do? What's the state do? What's the state do? A lot of these things are kind of local, right? You kind of have to figure it out for yourself a lot of times. It's unfortunate, but the state shouldn't be in the position of watching, trying to figure out how to make Charlotte grow or Raleigh grow or anything else, or Rocky Mount or Wilson. That's really, we should be in the business of making a fair, level playing field for all businesses, and those businesses start to grow. And then you providing the things here in Rocky Mount that would attract those younger folks. Now, I can say on the side of teaching, for instance, those kinds of jobs the government is responsible for, and we pay for teachers to go into our rural communities. Differentiated pay to get teachers to come is one thing. Getting them to stay is another thing. that's been an issue forever here. That's not a new thing. I mean, young people like yourself, the fact that you're here and not in Raleigh is an anomaly, right? I mean, young people are attracted to those things. But the interesting thing is when they get to be about my age, they're attracted to these things. And so, you know, I would love to live in Rocky Mountain, you know, versus Raleigh. I love small towns America. I like everything about small towns. I think people's mindsets change over time, right? And then they come back to small towns. And I think you're going to continue to see that because every day Raleigh's getting closer to Rocky Mountain, Rocky Mountain's getting closer to Raleigh, every single day. And that's true all across. And our state is far more connected than most. We have a phenomenal highway system. We have the best roads in America. There are 2 states in the country. A lot of people don't know this. When you pass through North Carolina, you wonder why our gas tax is so high. And we did cut the gas tax too, by the way. But if you wonder why our gas tax is so high, it's because there's only 2 states in America that pay for their roads the way we do. It's us and Texas. Every other state pays for it locally through the county at the county level. So you can go from one county that's a wealthy county into a poor county and have horrible roads. You don't do that in North Carolina. So we have a much more equitable system, which I like. I like it that way. But we have. Think about our urban cores that we have. For a state our size, and we're getting to be one of the larger ones now, but we have Asheville. Really, Hickory is still generally a growing place again now. You have Charlotte, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Triad area, the Triangle, Wilmington, Greenville. We have a lot of what we consider urban cores in North Carolina, far more than most states have. And so that bodes well, I think, for rural North Carolina, and bodes well for places like this. So keep up the stuff you're doing. I know it's hard, you know, but eventually people will get smart and realize that Rocky Mountain exists, and they'll come discover it. So thank you for what you do. I know we got to wrap up right there. Thank you guys very much. This was great discussion.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I wanted to certainly be mindful of everybody's time and your time. And I just want to say thank you to Representative Collins. He is probably one of the strongest small business supporters and members of the House. And he stands on the floor. He may be the only one standing for a small business issue, but he's standing there for small business. Also, NFIB is governed by Leadership Council. Johnny Bass is one of our members of our Leadership Council. Johnny, thank you for being here. And we just want, you know, our goal is to bring elected officials to you, to listen to you, to take what you have, your concerns back to Raleigh and work on those. But I wanted to thank the Lieutenant Governor again. We were in Smithfield a couple weeks ago and Concord, and we've got other places to go. But thank you for being here today, because it's very very helpful to all of us to hear from you and to learn from each other. So I hope everybody has a great day. And again, I want to thank the Chamber for partnering with us, and the community college is a wonderful facility. And thank you for letting us use that. Everybody have a great day.